There you
I
go.
think of it like that.
So last night, and I'll share an example, but this is one of the activities I want you to do today. So it's interesting, we're just gonna do briefly social psych just to answer this question, but that's obviously not the class, but it's all related. I love to create a theory, and I tell you this all the time, and then, you know, I make it, I name it, I practice it with my clients, or with you guys or whatnot. We're gonna do that today, very important for critical thinking. Because every single one of us are constantly creating theories about people, about places. We call them oftentimes opinions. What's the difference between a theory and an opinion?
The opinion is something you think.
Okay, but isn't so a theory?
But a theory goes in depth. It
But
goes in
really, what distinguishes it? Why do I say to you, I created a new theory yesterday?
Theory is like
That
something you
it's-
follow, like
I don't wanna say
you
that.
know.
No, we're talking new theory,
Oh.
not something that's already been
That it
established.
has like a backup, like it has.
What's that called? A backup. An experiment. It has some research methods to it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've taken research methods, and not in a couple months, we're teaching research methods, what you're going to learn is that you're gonna do like little experiments. Sometimes experiments have one or two people, not the greatest ones. Sometimes they have thousands and thousands of people. Each and every single one of you, every human being, is constantly meeting someone or looking at a person or a place, a thing, a job, a situation, assessing it. You make an opinion. The only reason it is not a theory and you haven't put it in a book or made a video or called yourself a therapist, a psychologist, is because you haven't tried it out on more than that one person. You only have one mom. So if your mom is the devil, then your mom's the devil. Well, let's create a theory. I'm kidding.
No, she is.
And okay. So I'm not so kidding. Your mom's the devil. Now let's go and get some research behind it. Let's go and see if that's something that you can kind of quote unquote prove. It's not so much a
You have
proving.
no idea how many theories I've made up with her.
I know! But this is all of us. This is why people are like, oh my God, your ideas. All I do, because I have access to clients and students that let me, I don't know why you guys do, but you do, but I start all of my theories with myself. When I do my introspective work, when I'm looking at my subconscious, when something comes up, and something came up yesterday, and that's what I kind of want to play with today, with you guys. I made a theory yesterday, and I want to just try it out on you guys. We're just going to play with it. We're just going to see, could this possibly be...
We'll be your guinea pig.
Exactly, you're going to be my guinea pigs. That's it. That's all it is. And if it works out, then I'm like, oh wait, Francis, start formulating an idea. You give it a language, you give it a premise, you give it a thing, and then you stick it in a book, you make a video, you post it on Instagram, and now all of a sudden you're just super cool, and people like you and say, oh my gosh, you're so brilliant, and really you're not. But,
I have a question.
Yes.
Sorry to stop you. Then, if an opinion is that and a theory is that, what is a hypothesis? Like, where does
okay,
that-
great
you know, like-
question. When you have an opinion about someone, you are having an hypothesis.
Yeah.
The thing is, it's rooted from a judgment or a value that you have from childhood. If I say that person is a slut because I see the shorts hanging out and her ass is hanging out, that's my opinion about Sally who's walking by the hall.
I haven't read.
But my hypothesis has to come from somewhere. And it comes from judgments and values from childhood, from your buckets. The difference is that when you're working at Stanford, as we'll talk about in a moment in this prison experiment, so I'll give you the synopsis before you take that class, you are now getting some research, you're reading about social psych, experimentation, and from there, the researcher creates a hypothesis.
Oh, okay.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
The thing is, he or she is going to research-based stuff, finding something to support what he or she is doing that's science, and your opinion or my opinion of the woman with the short shorts being a slut is just my opinion. because I didn't go to the research articles to find that women that wear short shorts are sluts. That's the whole difference. But you do have a hypothesis. Your judgments and your opinions are hypotheses. And that hypothesis comes from your judgments and your values that were given to you when?
You were little.
When you were little, but even when? Before? When did all of this start? At the moment of conception. Okay, so if you don't believe in that, pregnancy, the womb, and if you don't believe in that, the birthing process, and if you don't believe in that, everyone believes 0 to 7.
Yeah.
Because it's childhood, and because every other therapist or psychologist has said it. So I give you my previous theories, but you don't have to believe any of them. You could start with what's really, 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 really established. Not that my stuff isn't established, it's just established in stuff that you guys don't probably read, like, Eastern texts and things like that. And maybe it's not written as much, I don't know. So I came up with a little theory last night from my story of my fairy tale, and I kind of want to see what you guys come up and then see if we can test it true. But in social psych, so the question, what was the question? Which therapist was not instrumental in the early years of the social psych movement? Social psychology deals with like the groups and these prison experiments and things like that. So there's a whole class on social psych. But what he did was he took groups of students at Stanford and he gave one a role of prisoner and one a role of guard. And he basically created a prison in the basement, and the people started taking on the role. The prisoners were like beating. These were fellow students. This is like if right now I say you guys, and you guys decide and really embody that you guys can beat them. People were like naked. They had to like stand in their own poop. I mean, watch it. They did a thing on YouTube, I think it's on, about it.
There are 2 movies. The original one.
Yeah.
So the first time I ever saw
Phenomenal.
it was in my intro to psychology class back in 2004. And I'm like,
That's a classic
I still
class.
remember
There's
that.
certain classic experiments.
Yeah.
It's like the prison experiment. You need to know Milgram.
Yeah.
You need to know about the Tuskegee Institute. This is where research, and we'll talk about this in research methods in a couple classes, this is where research started getting the rules so that no one would be harmed. At every university that gives master's or doctoral degrees, there's something called the IRB, the Internal Review Board. And until you get approval of your study, that you're not harming anyone or showing how it's not harming or what the consent says or whatnot, you cannot proceed with your master's if you're doing original research. Not all schools do original research or master's, but all doctorates should. You have to get approval. And that was created as a result of all of this stuff that went crazy at these other schools.
Including a little Albert experiment with working with children and consent.
Right. So all of that stuff you'll learn in research methods comes from people like me that create crazy theories and then try it out.
So
I don't think I harm anyone. I'm not poking or prodding or taking blood or old medication. But you know.
No, but what I'm saying, they were enclosed in a basement.
Yeah.
That also
They-
could fuck with your psyche.
But this time.
Yeah. But
Well,
that was,
okay,
they
let me-
consented to that.
Let's make this
Consent.
clear,
No,
okay?
They played prisoner
No,
and they played
Yeah,
guard.
but they
Yeah,
know
but
about
these
it.
were psychology students who were volunteering for credit to do
No,
this.
right, of
By the way, you'll see when you see the experiment.
Yeah.
No one was forced. Anyone can leave
all
at
right.
any
Anytime, but they
time.
wouldn't. They
They
assumed,
didn't
Then they
leave.
couldn't.
they assumed it.
They
That
assumed.
they were there, that this was really happening to them.
No, yeah.
You have a right to leave your house.
Jane
You're the
was
front door, you come to
definitely
school
become
every
one of those
week.
guards were.
So, it's
Well,
interesting though,
but
because
you didn't get to choose, right?
No, you didn't get to choose where you
guard
fell in.
or whether you were a prisoner.
But they knew that they could leave, and they knew that they was not
Exactly.
mandatory. They could leave
They
anytime.
were
But-
allowed to leave.
think of that from the psyche perspective. We have permission to quote unquote leave our parents' value systems and judgments at any time. but we don't. We repeat, we repeat, we repeat. Mostly because we don't know how. We think doing the opposite, or moving far away, or cooking excessively. We do it, we try, but we really don't leave. You know me, I tie everything back to the metaphor and the meaning. So that's interesting. Anyway, the answer is Eric Berne, the father of transactional analysis. Do you remember the transactional analysis that I taught you?
Like the parent?
That every single transaction, you can have adult, or you can have child-adult, and in the therapeutic process, you want adult. Because if not, you're putting the client in the situation of child. You assume, just like in this experiment, you assume the role of parent, and then the person doesn't maybe get better. Now, of course, you have to see where the client comes from. The client had to grow up too fast, and they never had a loving parent. It might be beneficial, this is where you as a therapist choose, to start off with a child-adult interaction. Give that person as a child some love, some empathy, let them get rapport, and then once you see that they've developed some sort of groundedness, then you can shift to an adult. That's why sometimes therapy takes so long. You need to assess where your client is coming. That's a big thing. When I first started, my tendency and the nature of my work was an assumption that you're an adult and I'm an adult and I'm telling you how it is. And I've told you before that I was quite a bitch and very harsh, and I've toned down and empathy and all of that because there are times that someone needs that softness. I didn't have that softness, so I didn't know to give that softness. I had to learn the hard way, even if I was doing therapy. It wasn't in sort of my skill set, if you will, because I just didn't. And my administrative background it did require it, but like I said, I was a freaking animal, so. But I learned, so there are times now where I have to spend, or I see the person struggling, or I see the client really just needs the core, empathic, loving, parental skill. I have to give that to them. And then we can go into, okay, now you assume your responsibility, and boom, boom, boom. So this guy was the transactional analysis. He was not related to social psychology. Okay, question of the day. Perfect. So when that one shows up on the test, I'll pass because of you. Okay, so let's create our own theory. Do you remember, good morning, do you remember a movie that you related to, that you did the fairy tale?
Yeah.
The one that you did that day?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I did.
You could pick that one, or you could just write your favorite story down. If any one of, I was talking to Mrs. Pachi earlier, and I was saying how Peter Pan was one of my favorites when my kids were little, and then I said, oh, it's this, this, and this. So just on a piece of paper, write down your favorite Disney fairy tale. Are those for the class? What is the deal today? She brought me sugar, already broke my fast, now this.
We already broke your fast. That's a good thing.
With a drop of sugar in my coffee. When I brought that to my mouth, I was trying to hide my nonverbal of, oh shit.
It's a tiny little bit of coffee mate, that's it.
But it breaks the fast immediately. Yes,
Since
Philip.
you're mentioning fairy tale so much, I'm going to confess what's the conspiracy. We want to fetch you up so we can eat you.
Awesome, Hansel and Gretel. Love it. Good. Very good. Excellent. The brother's great. The other day, I don't know if you were here,
Because
but
we're
I
not supposed to
brought.
have food in here, so hurry up and eat. We're not supposed to have food in the
Yeah.
classroom, remember? The big
Come
stupid
on,
sign that we-
the dark side, be edged.
Everybody's like,
It's the last class too.
I
Oh,
know.
That's right,
okay.
today's the last class.
It's
Okay.
But they do not.
Is it anyone's
They
birthday?
don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
No,
I'll be the
Oh
one
no,
that.
it's
Answer!
her birthday.
June
No, it's,
28th.
yeah, she
We
didn't.
missed it.
well, happy birthday.
Okay, happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lily. Happy birthday to you. And your son? Okay, listen to what she just said. Listen, this is so important. Shh, this is so important in the psyche of a Cancer. Cancer is the sign of the mother. Cancer is the sign of food. Okay? Cancer rules the breast. Because when the child comes out, the only thing the kid wants is the boob. Next month when we do health, we'll talk more about the body parts. But when you tend to see large breast area, there tends to be something maternal or needing to nurture. We're singing her happy birthday. And as we're about to say her name, she says, and my son, because the identity is so wrapped up in the mothering, the child, and that when I talk to you about getting the person's birthday and just kind of having, and we'll do a little bit of that. We'll find a class to stick that in, where I give you like key words or key themes, and it's all over my website and all over my YouTube and stuff like that. And Tanisha would already be Googling it right now if she was here, but and bring us all a handout. But notice right there, that theme. There's food, we're honoring her, but the identity of the other and the mother is so important that as we're about to say her name, she's like, El Niño. And what's El Niño's name?
Eligio.
Happy birthday, Eligio, because we need to honor mom. So you can take a bite for Eligio first, and then you take a bite for you. But it's in the psyche of your sign. Your sun sign is not an accident. There is a real lesson in there. That's for another class, but I don't want to miss that opportunity. Yes,
It's your son's birthday?
they're both Cancers.
Oh, and the mom, okay, got it.
But the mother, now the kid would be eating his cupcake
No, I
at
get
school,
it.
and he would say, oh, my mom too.
No, I totally get it. It's not for a
She'd be like, me too. It's my mom, just to get a second one.
I thought you meant for like the sun Cancer, they just automatically will do like the whole, not the whole same birthday month, but just acknowledge the sun just on their birthday just because.
No,
Okay,
it's because
okay,
her
alright.
child.
I got you.
Okay, but
That was the first for me, I've never heard that before.
psyche of a Cancer.
No,
Psyche of a
but James has
Cancer,
some birthday.
even if a Cancer does not have children. Any other Cancers in here? Okay. Psyche of a Cancer. There is no self if there isn't someone I'm nurturing and taking care of. She doesn't exist without the belly, without what I'm birthing. This does not mean a baby, a person. It could be a book, it could be an idea, it could be a temper tantrum, it could be my friends, it could be the job. There has to be another. Think of mother, other. There is no me, M, without the other. She doesn't exist. So it's her birthday, and she has to bring the other in. That is the psyche of someone at that time. And it comes back from mythology. And the myth of a Cancer comes from a myth of Diana or Apollo and Artemis. They were twins. So right in the womb, she had to share space first. Not the twin sign of Gemini. We're talking Cancer. She was born first And what do you think happened right after she's born? Who does she have to take? If we know that she has to take care of someone, she stays, newborn baby, mind you, these are stories. She comes out first. She gets up and she helps her mother birth her brother. In the story, the other. My worth is tied in the other. It's in the word mother. And mother is just someone who births something. Does not have to be a person, a child. People get really caught up in that because there's a big movement of people, especially women, that don't want children. And they're being criticized and ridiculed and this and that. No, people birth different things. You birth ideas. This is what we're going to do today. We're going to birth a theory. We're going to try it out. We birth friendships. We birth, business negotiations. Those are births. I'm sorry?
What you want to, whatever you believe in, that's yours.
If you actually do it. What hinders most adults is that they don't birth what they want to birth. So, a lot of theorists, Brene Brown is one of my favorites who talks about this, talks about the importance of play. She's great. She is actually a social worker in Houston. The importance of play. Anyone see those adult coloring books that are really popular now with all the mandalas? Did anyone see my Instagram post this weekend? I posted one that it was called Fuck This Shit Adult Coloring Books. And I wrote, this is the perfect mix of spirit and matter. This is the type of spiritual book I want to read. Because every bad word is like in the coloring of the mandala. And my whole theory boils down to spirit, matter, or all the stuff we've talked about. Light, dark, yin, yang, blah, 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 blah. So in that coloring book, you've got the matter, right? The lower nature. And because they're mandalas and spiritual, then they're over here, higher nature. But what is the importance of this new movement of adult coloring books? Why is that important?
Wasn't it for kind of like almost like meditation type, like where like.
Right, but what is it doing for the adult?
It's like connecting the spirit.
Isn't it supposed to like?
The word is on the board.
Play.
Play.
Oh.
Adults versus children don't play. They stop playing. We get busy. We have to pay bills. There's other types of play at the adult level, but some people criticize that. And God forbid we go to the adult play store. Hell, I'd rather go to the adult play store than the coloring book that says fuck this shit, but I don't got a partner, so I gotta deal with the coloring book that I got. I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? So, the importance of play. What happens when you play? What happens when you color? What happens every time you draw? Because you're always drawing.
You escape.
Okay, you can escape, you're relaxed, but what part of you are you tapping into?
My children, my inner child.
Your inner child. We are in child psychology. Play is important. I had you guys draw a thing, I had you roll the ball, I had you do the fairy tales. These are activities for adults and children alike that are specifically to connect with that child in you that was killed off, dead, sitting in a corner on punishment many, many, many years ago because you did something wrong. So adults, super, super important.
Are they playing board games and stuff like that? Count?
Yes, your board game night is wonderful.
We have that every night.
Okay.
We're addicted to
Okay.
a card game called Phase 10.
Okay.
Addicted. Like, we even bought a card shuffler machine.
Perfect.
We even took it to Orlando.
Perfect.
Play, like,
And you're
crazy.
playing, and this is important, but what's the importance of play in the psyche? You're a child We're just gonna say 0 to 7, because here your trauma happens. And then you're an adult. You're gonna have different types of clients. You're gonna have the eternal Peter Pan. What's the story of Peter Pan?
You never go.
Never grows up. You are going to have those clients. Prior to just a few weeks ago, you had that teacher. Okay?
I have relatives like this.
Of course you do. Because you are so mature that you have to have relatives like that. And they annoy you. And they show up late and they don't commit and they're like bippity boppity booing. And it's gotta piss you off because you are over here. People, life is work. We gotta be responsible. We gotta show up. We gotta do our work. Every time, whether it's he's late, whether it's he's not coming, miss, this is happening. Responsible. And I'm like, no problem. But you could tell that plus he's a Capricorn, so he already has that by his nature. That's another story. So you're gonna get clients that are Peter Pans, and then you're gonna get the Wendy. You know the story? Wendy was the oldest daughter of the 3, Michael, Paul, and her, I think. And Peter Pan was the inner child, the part that never grew up. Wendy lost that, because in the story of Peter Pan, the kids in London were forced to go to the countryside and leave their parents during the war. That whole story was about that experience with those children. Going to Never Never Land was trying to get those children, and then in Cuba we had a movement called El Pedro Pan, based on that, where those kids, Willie Chirino sings about this. He was one of those kids. They were forced to come here, live with strangers. Those children at a very, very young age, I think Chirino says he was like 2 or 3, were traumatized. They were basically ripped from the safety of their home. That story, Peter Pan, is based on that, but it's very much in the psyche. You're gonna have that one client that never grows up, or you're gonna have the child who's forced to grow up and take on all the responsibility. In psychology, a lot of times, this is related to birth order, where you see the older one is the grown-up, the Wendy, and the youngest one, the baby. In my case, it didn't really work out textbook, but there is a little bit of that. And then the baby is the Peter Pan, is the eternal child. In either circumstances, there's some 48 to 52 that needs, because you can't be on either extreme. But let's talk about the adult and why we talk about play. The adult says, oh my God, I have to pay the bills, I gotta take care of the kids, I gotta this, I gotta that. And so one of the major things that is killed off in adults is play, is their childlike attitude. We work with a man who is so serious. The man works excessively. I'm constantly saying, can you please go home? Get out of here. Well, I don't know what happened to him yesterday.
I know.
He was laughing and laughing and laughing. But there was not anything. He was just like, but it was like the whole day we went into meeting after meeting and he was cracking jokes and I'm like, who are you? Like, this is not like him. But he was like, and then later in the evening, towards the end of the day, he was at his desk and I kind of saw his eye and I said, you're having like the bipolar swings. I go, you were so manic that now you're like crashing because he's so out of character. That was a very playful day for this person. Most people on a regular basis don't have play or creativity or motherhood in their life. Motherhood or birth or creativity comes from our lower nature, our second chakra. We'll talk about that in health psychology. From the sex center. That's why Freud was so misunderstood. And I never read the German texts So I don't know if it's just lost in translation. But I think part of what he was talking about, because repression, especially sexual repression, what he was really getting at, I think, was people. The sexual energy is the creative energy, is the playful energy. And what births a baby? What is the only thing, universal truth, that births a baby? Sexual energy, whether it's in a test tube,